I think I'll read back a little bit here. Well, how do you know how do you know that's the Bible? Asked Sally. Well, as Niles points out in his journal in that flash drive and in the videos he put on there too, is that if the book the Quran is talking about isn't the Bible, then as I ask, and then I asked Muslims all then as I asked then as I ask Muslims all the time as I asked Muslims all the time on the internet before I started trucking, then what, pray tell, is the book that makes people of the book Jews and Christians? What is the Injil if the Injil is not the New Testament? What are the before scriptures if they aren't the Bible? If the books of Allah are corrupted, then how can you, a Muslim, believe the Quran that tells you you have to believe in those books of Allah? The Quran actually says it confirms whatever scripture that came before it. Can you imagine the stupidity of that? That means the book that makes people the book is not corrupted like you Muslims have been forced to believe, because you know the Quran doesn't confirm squat with the Bible. That the Bible is mostly all about getting to heaven by believing on what Christ did on the cross in some form or other. And the Quran totally refutes the Bible by saying Christ was only made to appear to go to the cross, thus making the whole Bible not only just a little corrupted, but utterly corrupted. And then you have Quran 568 telling me, a Christian person of the book, to stand firm upon something as corrupted as the Injil? Do you see how devastating this is to Islam? So, to test to see if there are Muslims out here on the road with me, I recite the monologue of Neville over the CB. And I get into it with them, if they hear me. And it also lets me know if they are out here. It also lets me know if they are out there. So far, no bites here. Sally sat there thinking over what Daniel said. She then went back to reading. As she read, Daniel then said, "Oh, by the way, you don't mind clicking on the internet with that thing and seeing if there is any report of any skirmish with your buds last night?" Sally replied back with, I didn't know them very well. They really weren't my buds. I was flown up to Seattle by my husband, where I met them at the mosque there. I was given a car while they were given a Cadillac." "Husband?" asked Daniel. "So you are married? Must be a lot of fun being married to a Muslim man, right?" Sally remained silent. "Interesting that your husband would send you out on such a venture to try to get a silly old flash drive from me. I mean, he must think you're some kind of Janie Bond, wouldn't you say?" laughed Daniel. Sally said, Daniel went on with, "He must really have a lot of faith in Allah to send you out and risk having you have to explain why you'd shoot me if cops came." Doesn't he realize that you might have been locked up, even though the world seems to be bending over backwards to accommodate Islam? I mean, where is your husband's head? Risk a wife as cute as you to perform jihad that could have resulted in your possible death if I was as ruthless and evil as the Quran claims Kafirs to be? I'm not his only wife. He's got 7 others, and they can give him children," said Sally sadly. Daniel asked, "Oh, so you can't have kids, and he sacrifices you on a whim like this?" "I'm not his favorite wife, being that I can't have kids. Since I can't, he told me I could please Allah by trying to get that flash drive from you," said Sally, looking down. Daniel shook his head and said, "I can't believe you can't have kids. Everything about you seems to scream baby maker." "Strange. Something about the tubes being the way they are," said Sally sadly. Daniel laughed and said, If your Muslim husband can afford so many wives, seems to me, he could have sent you to the right doctors to have whatever it is corrected for jihadi making, yeah, corrected for jihadi making in a big way. Or he could have litters of jihadis. He doesn't want men poking around down there. And yet he'll have you in some guy's truck ogling you? Makes sense, joked Daniel. Daniel then said, wait a minute. I know why he's putting you up to this. Because old Mo said that if a woman can't have kids, she is to be rejected for the one that can. Even if you love her, because he, Mo, needs to be multiplied over the people. Well, that hadith has, it's something like that. But that's it, isn't it? Sully nodded yes and recited, quote, a man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, I have found a woman of rank and beauty, but she does not give birth to children. Should I marry her? He said, no. He came again to him, but he prohibited him. He came to him a third time, and he said, the Prophet said, marry women who are loving and very prolific, for I shall outnumber the people by you. Daniel nearly shouted out, ah, that's old Mo for you. I'd say that you are a little bit familiar with that saying. That's from the book of Abu Dawud, isn't it? Sully nodded sadly and said, book number 11, hadith number 2045. Daniel then said, well, maybe God is keeping you non-prolific for a damn good reason. Keeping you barren for a while to keep you from breeding terrorists. Have you ever thought that? Consider it as a blessing from the one true God to be barren for a while, girl. I mean, again, everything about you says baby maker. I bet the thing could be fixed so easily. You could probably flood the world with beautiful beings who would better the world, not enslave it. Sully laughed. Nice to see that you can laugh. But yeah, that's it. You aren't a jihadi maker, so you have to be a jihadi soldier yourself. And since you can't have kids, so he thinks, tough titty. You really don't mean anything to your Muslim hubby, no matter how cute and sexy you are, because, again, you can't multiply Muhammad's image. Well, can't make Mo, quote, outnumber the peoples by you. You can't multiply, so those who fight in Allah's cause. You can't multiply those who will fight in Allah's cause. I bet you don't find that even just a little bit unloving and evil, right? Sally was afraid to say. Still believe in the most compassionate, most merciful, I see, said Daniel. So, instead of abandoning you, he sends you up to take part in jihad since you can't create soldiers for jihad. Okay, And you mentioned a Cadillac. You mentioned a Cadillac, huh? By the time they were attacking me, there was no Cadillac involved. Strange. Maybe they ditched it for something else? Well, who really cares? So you're married. How long have you been married to the guy who seems to be trying to reject you since you can't multiply Muhammad? I mean, have Muhammad, quote, outnumber the people. Since I was 12, said Sally. You sound like you were born and raised in America. Born and raised American. If so, how in the world did he marry you at that age? Sally looked up and said, a neighbor of mine living across the street later met my husband and told him about me. He told my future husband that he was secretly taking pictures of me from his upper bedroom window whenever I was out on the lawn playing with my friends. I didn't know about him. I didn't know about him doing that until my husband married me and showed me copies of those, and didn't until my I didn't know about him doing that until my husband married me and showed me copies of those pictures. Most of the pictures were when I was wearing a bikini, starting when I was 6. 6? The same age Aisha was when Mo married her. Oh well. So, some pedo got you involved with a Muslim, asked Daniel. How come I don't find that surprising? Well, I tell you, Islam is tailor-made for a pedophile. You can disagree with me all you want, but again, if you are a pedophiliac child molesting wife beater who is the jealous type, then man, Islam is the religion for you. There is no getting out of this fact. There's no getting out of this fact, girl. None. Sully went on with, believe it or not, the guy who was taking pictures of me did, in fact, become a Muslim. That's how he met my future husband and showed me those pictures. Of course, said Daniel. Sully went on with, and when he showed Mustafa, Daniel butted in with, Mustafa, your husband? Yes, said Sully. When he showed him those pictures of me, starting when I was 6, up until I was 11, in that order, my future husband was right at the doorstep, ringing away. He told my mother he'd give her $5 million if she'd let him marry me, giving her $1 million up front. Daniel laughed and said, "That's amazing." Sally went on with, my mother was strapped for cash, about to be evicted, liked to party, and, well, really wasn't much of a mother. Kind of saw me as being in the way of her fun. Plus, she seemed to really be jealous of me. Next thing I know, I'm living in an apartment filled with rugs and no chairs. Dane shook his head and said, and he no doubt found out you were barren then, I bet. Sully nodded yes, then said, his other wives treated me okay. I hope they didn't remove your pleasure button, said Daniel. Pleasure button, asked Sully. Well, the thing that is removed with female castration, you know, clit. Sally said, oh no, that hasn't happened, thank Allah. Daniel then said, I hear female mutilation is common in Islam, even though I can't find it in the Quran or the Hadith. It's common in Africa, said Sally. Daniel then said, nice to know you weren't bought by a Muslim into female mutilation, leaving you intact the way God made you. I was wondering, do you think Allah made a mistake giving a girl that pleasure device? Or do you think that Satan helped Allah make that part to create temptation? But if that's the case, wouldn't that be partnering with Allah? Of course, if you read the Quran, Allah partners with Jibril to get Mary pregnant with Jesus by blowing into Mary's farjaha, i.e. vagina. Well, I don't get it. I don't get it either, said Sally. Sally suddenly saw the latest news on the internet and noticed an article that said, deadly pileup outside Twin Falls, Idaho. The article was only 5 minutes old. Sally called Daniel's attention to it. Daniel said, oh, wow. I was just there last night. Please read it, Afifa. Afifa? Asked Sally. Daniel smiled and said, I kind of like your Muslim name. It's growing on me. But again, I think you're more of an Ashadiya. Sally smiled. She then looked at the article and read, a deadly pileup occurred north of Twin Falls, Idaho, resulting in a gas tanker truck losing control and crashing through the railing before falling in a fiery death at the bottom of the Snake River Canyon. Holy Toledo, shouted Daniel. Read on.